You are now listening to the Going Deep podcast with your hosts, Kevin Massari and Mike Bunt, live from the Cover One Sports Network. Here we go.
Welcome into another edition of the Going Deep podcast. Boy, is it getting close to free agency, Mike. Only a few weeks away as the franchise trade deadline opened today for the the deadline period for the franchise tag. So we're pretty excited to see what comes out of this news and notes. But first, Jordan Poyer had some comments today as well, but we'll be right back at you very shortly.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship. Well, I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw, and it is hauled in for the touchdown. Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown. Play action. Allen, deep downfield, wide open.
Boy, what a beautiful February day, Mike. In late February, as we're kind of getting through the winter here, slowly but surely, with these ice and hailstorms that we have going on coming up here this week. 60-degree days. We got some free agency coming up very soon, a couple of weeks, the tampering period, everybody's favorite time of year. We have the combine coming up next week, at the end of next week as well. So that should be fun. Lots of stuff to take away from that. I'm sure we'll be getting some great player profiles from the team. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Like you said, we're getting some nice weather in Buffalo this past week and a half. Can't beat that in February. And sooner than later, we're going to have that combine and some more draft stuff to talk about going forward. So good time, a nice little break, but I can't wait to get more into the Bills offseason in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, I look forward to the Raz scores coming out. We'll get probably Kent Lee Platty on here, the much talked about Raz. We'll see what he has to say about everything that's going on. Whether we've had some internal debates, whether the Bills follow Raz or not, that'll be a topic of discussion going forward. Kent told us that they're starting to use Raz as one of their higher Raz teams. So we're going to, and a lot of their hits have been players above a 6 Raz score. So it's something that we're going to track all spring as we get more into the draft time. But right now there's been some topics, Mike, and it's of Poyer. I want to start with Jordan Poyer. And he said, he's loved his 6 years in Buffalo and how exciting of a time it is for him and his family to go out and pursue free agency. And whether he may or may not have ever exchanged numbers with Brandon Beane or not, it's a pretty big topic of discussion. So where do you stand on that? Do you think Von Miller changed the Bills' perspective on money? Do you think that signing Dawson Knox kind of affected what they did with Jordan Poyer? Where do you stand with that? And is there a realistic way or path back for Jordan to this roster? Or are we kind of already through that saying, he's probably good as gone?
I feel like he's already as good as gone, but that doesn't mean that necessarily is the case. If he goes out in free agency and there isn't the market that he's expecting, I guess there always is the possibility that he could come back to Buffalo if the offer, if there was an offer that was similar to anything on the table. I do believe some team out there that has a bunch of cap is going to throw money at him. Not every team in the NFL was always thinking about winning the Super Bowl, but you always are trying to sell tickets to your fan base. And Jordan Poyer is a big name free agent based on what he's done in Buffalo since he got here in 2017. What is interesting is it does appear that the Bills have kind of limited what they believe his number has been. And that's been the case since he's kind of gotten to the Bills organization, whether or not, obviously we know he's a truly special talent, but you almost have to wonder if Beane and them have lowered his value over the years by basically saying, you play alongside Micah Hyde, you've been part of a great defensive scheme, you capitalize off of being in this system with great playmakers around you. Not that he's not one himself, but it could potentially be that you look at his age, you look at what he's demanding, and the Bills are just like, you're just not worth that premium to us.
Right.
Not that we don't respect you, but we have you at a certain number, and you have far surpassed that based on your play on the field.
So I guess sum it up for us. So we're going to talk a lot about Jordan Poyer, and I've seen a lot of numbers thrown around. This is what's confusing about him. Like, will he take a single digit per year? I don't know. I don't think so. Will he end 8 to 10? It's questionable. Do you feel like, is there a number that you would feel comfortable with? Like, okay, that's a number where they probably shouldn't lose the end of the career for Jordan Poyer, like 3 for 30. Like, is there a number that would make you feel comfortable with bringing him back?
I mean, if it's any less than 10, it's going to be kind of hard to accept. I know when we were talking about this last summer, heading into training camp, when there was talk, well, could they be talking to one another with Drew Rosenhaus involved? At that point, we were thinking that Poyer was probably a fair deal would have been around 13 million. Maybe he wanted 14, something like that. You look at the Tyrann Mathieu contract, and if Poyer gets closer to that, we could be looking at 10, 11 million. And that's where it'd be kind of difficult to see him leave. The question would be, if he did leave to another team for 10, 11 million, what type of term is he getting? Is he getting a third year? Is a team willing to go longer to make him somewhat happy with that? Realistically, if I'm the Bills, I'd want probably a 2-year deal, 11, 12 million. Poyer, realistically, I believe he's going out there wanting to make 14, 15. I'm not saying that's realistic, but why not see what you're worth? And worst case scenario, you're not worth what you think you are. You always have the fallback plan that the Bills are going to want you. It's not like the Bills are just going to say, hey, you're not welcome back here. I think if Poyer was humbled in free agency, there should always still be that door or avenue back to coming back if he's willing to take something on the Bills' terms.
Yeah, Drew Rosenhaus agent last year, I mean, probably kind of put some pressure on the Bills, and the Bills are kind of like, we're not going to touch this right now, is what I'm going to assume happened. I don't know that there was ever money talks exchanged. I think the Bills kind of just maybe in future or past years said, hey, we'll get you done, maybe something like that. Things came up. Von Miller calls. They feel a good deal was had for Dawson Knox at the early last season. And now all of a sudden that money's getting tight. And what do you do? So Spot Track estimates he's at 11 million. PFF estimated 8.5 million for Jordan Poyer. Jordan himself probably wouldn't agree with the 8.5. 11's probably even slightly low for what he's probably thinking. But I think a team needs to go to 3 years on Jordan for a couple reasons. A, you can push out a bonus for a third year. B, you can backload it and make that third year fairly unattainable anyways. C, it pumps up the total numbers for Rosenhaus. There's a lot of reasons for the third year, and it gives teams relief this year. So the third year, I think the Bills would actually want. Really, he'd play 2. I think the Bills would want a third year on there, so that gives them leverage and flexibility in case he's still playing at a high level. They could keep him for a third. They could push some money out. I don't know that it's super outlandish that the Bills could get him done, but I do think he'd be closer to the PFF 8.5 to get back in Buffalo. I don't think he's in double digits. I don't think, at least in Buffalo, he would even approach the 11 to 13 number. I don't think that they're there. But if it gets down to 9, 8 over 3, I think that becomes appealing to Brandon Beane, who would probably have him on the cap at about 5 million, like he always has this year. So it's all kind of a game. But it's a matter of, I do think there's a game that the Bills win and they come out with Jordan Poyer, especially if he's getting similar offers on the market and to maybe non-playoff or non-competitive teams to teams that are, I don't know that that's where he'll go at this stage of his career. Maybe a Dallas, but he'd go back to Cleveland. I don't know where his mindset is. Everyone talks about Miami with him, obviously the natural connection there down there. But Miami's in some of their own cap problems. They need a lot. They need to do a lot there. And that team, they don't have running backs. They don't have tight ends. They have a lot of focus and needs to go, Mike. So I don't think he can just pick and say, I want to play for Miami. I do believe that there is a time in this free agency period where Jordan could come back to the Bills and say, all right, you got 8, you got 9. That seems to be like what I can do. And I'll take it rather than go to Cleveland for 9. I might go to you for 8.5. Do you think that's realistic, or do you think that what's your final opinion? Do you think he gets the bag? Jordan Poyer gets the bag for $12+ million?
I think he will get the bag for 12 plus.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to get like the 15 million that maybe some people would have thought could have been a possibility last offseason. But I do think he's going to get in the 12 plus range. We know how teams throw crazy money during free agency. That's the big reason why I think it's unlikely he comes back. The Bills didn't touch his number. He obviously is putting a high value on himself. And if he doesn't get the 12+ million, I will kind of feel a little bad for him, just because from the way his career started, obviously I don't feel bad for overall money. I mean, he's made a tremendous living. He's made a ton of money during his NFL career, but to really be a little bit of a later bloomer, where when he came to Buffalo, he was already with a few organizations. He was an unproven free agent. So when he comes to Buffalo, he's really kind of a secondary piece behind Micah Hyde, who was the big ticket item. You have all the success, but you sign contract extensions for reasonably fair money, but you end up outperforming it greatly. You end up getting a first-team All-Pro, then a Pro Bowl appearance, and you're really never going to get, if he doesn't cash out on this contract, the money that'll basically go along with the production of his career. He has far outperformed the amount of money that he's gotten paid. We've seen far worse players get paid far more money just based on potential and where they've been drafted. So in a way, a lot of these athletes, obviously the money is important from a living aspect, but a lot of these athletes use the money to also as a justification of basically their talent and to point to what they've contributed on an NFL field. And for someone like Jordan Poyer, that we know the recognition means a lot to him. We know what he's campaigned for, being a Pro Bowler, for being an All-Pro player. I look at this as, even if he's going to a losing team, he will look at this as, I finally got my worth for all the years of work I put in. So not likely to be Buffalo, but I am happy for him if he does cash in.
Two questions, Mike. One being, final to wrap up Jordan Poyer. One being, if he came back to you right now and said, I would take 3 for $30, do you take it?
I probably would. You know what? I know he's on the wrong side of 30, but there are safeties in the past that have played into their mid-30s at a reasonably high level. You know that you're going to have Micah Hyde back next year, so you're going to have at least one more year of Hyde. And if you had Poyer in that scenario, I would feel good about the defense in a Super Bowl window area. So yeah, I would probably do that. I'd be a little bit worried about the later years, but the real question there would be, what would be the tail off in years 2 and 3? And I still think at that point he'd probably be as good as another replacement level player that you would put in at that spot.
Where do you think he would go? Do you think Cleveland? Do you think New York?
Oh, I have no clue, man. No. Because what type of teams are going to be going after him? Is it going to be a winner, a contender that's looking for the final piece? Is it going to be because, like, let's be real, when we're talking about teams throwing a bag, it's normally the lesser teams in the NFL. So, and what makes it tough for them for a lesser team to throw a bag of money at a person like Poyer is he's already on the wrong side of 30. So that's what makes this all kind of difficult, because if you're not going to get a long-term deal, the most you're going to see him probably get is 3 years. It's going to need to be one of those teams that's kind of the mid-tier teams, a team that's like maybe an 8-9 win team that thinks that splashy free agent addition can
that's why I think the Giants
put them slightly above the top. So I don't think he's going to go to a crap team, but I don't think it's going to be a contending team either, because I just don't see many of the top teams giving a long-term high value contract to a person at his age.
Yeah, I agree. I'm where I would need Jordan at a very reasonable rate, including a deal where he's basically making 3 to 5 in his first year based on the way it's structured, regardless of what the total annual value is, the total contract value is, I should say. So to me, I'm a no unless he's getting creative with me and we're sitting at the table and I've designated Jordan to come back and we're talking single digits in the first year, pretty low in the second year, and maybe a balloon third year that may or may not exist. That's just a different way to say he's only getting a 2-year deal at like $16 million. So, so to me, that would be a very team friendly deal. And that's probably the only way that I see Jordan coming back. And I'm not ruling that out. I mean, anything's possible, but I think the Bills need to pivot and utilize that cap space elsewhere. Getting in, I know we talked a little bit about Tremaine Edmonds last week, Mike. Devin Singletary, though, he's an interesting name because, no one's talking about him. How much do the Bills really like him? We're assuming that he's just gone and walked, but we don't 100% know that, especially similar to the Poyer debate. If to a lesser extent, he's willing to come back at 2 for $8 or something. So where do you stand on Devin Singletary? Would it be nice to come into this year with your running backs, not really having to deal with it? Or would it be, dipping into the free agent pool and or later in the draft, or maybe early if Bijan Robinson happens to fall? Where do you stand on the Singletary debate? And what if it's a team-friendly 2 for $8? Like, where do we go?
I don't even know if I'd do the 2 for $8, to be honest with you, Kev.
Okay.
I don't want to spend much money at running back. And my thing is, if this was a normal offseason where you didn't have a million great running backs hitting free agency, maybe I'd say 2 for $8, take it and continue to get decent production out of the running back position. But it is so loaded right now, Kev, in free agency and this draft, that why are you going to pay $4 million for a running back? You don't need to at this point. Really, the play isn't even to go out and be aggressive at these running backs. It's let everyone else be aggressive and then go after who's remaining and be like, hey, you come to Buffalo, you'll have a chance to get 50-50 split with James Cook, and you'll have a chance to be on a contending team that has won a division title 3 consecutive years. And if that doesn't work out for you, you take someone in the 4th, 5th round and you go forward with that. Even a guy like Sean Tucker could be a 3rd round pick out of Syracuse, maybe even an early 4th round pick, depending on how things fall. I'd be perfectly content having a Sean Tucker, James Cook backfield. You still have Nyheim Hines on this team. They have to figure out what they're going to do with him because his cap hit is, quite frankly, a little bit he's getting paid a little bit more than what he should be at the moment for the Bills too. So I like Devin Singletary. He's a good player. And in the past, I could see more of a role for him. But just the way running back has gotten devalued in this current market, it's hard for me to have him back unless he takes a tremendous discount, which I really don't think would be fair to him. If I'm Devin Singletary, I'm going to want to see what I can get if the Bills are only offering me $2-3 million a year, which we know probably worth a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a number that makes sense. Again, I think Brandon Beane does have a number. If he comes back and maybe 2 for $6, that's what Jamal Williams signed. Does he done more than Jamal Williams in his career? Maybe a little bit, but I don't ultimately, prior to this year, that is, I don't know if you decline someone coming back and you get that checkbox and you don't have to worry and use that pick. There is a number that the team probably feels comfortable with, but there are some really good running backs behind the top couple that could be had. Like you already mentioned a couple, Zach Charbonnet, Dwayne McBride, Chris Rodriguez Jr. from Kentucky, Sean Tucker, Tank Bigsby, Tajay Spears,
from
Chase
Tulane,
from Illinois.
Right?
Yeah, Deuce Vaughn. There's a couple names there that I think the Bills could get a different style. Tajay Shop's pretty similar to what they have, but the others are pretty similar, or excuse me, would be a new kind of different style of running back that could come in and do something different. And those guys could be had late 3rd to the 5th, somewhere in there, when they'll start to probably rapidly go, because they're talented players in there that people will probably want to spend a 4th on. And that's really where the value, everyone's looking for a Bernard Pierce. That value is pretty decent in that range.
A kind of a change late in the season where they started to transition more to James Cook. I'm not saying that Cook will ever be a primary number 1. I don't know what the Bills' long-term plans are with him, but watching Cook, seeing some of that explosiveness that he has in his game, it made it more evident of what Singletary was lacking overall as a player. And none of this is to slight him. Singletary is a very good talent. His vision and his ability to avoid tackles, make plays, and make a defender miss, it's incredible. But the lack of burst and the real lack of pass catching ability, it hurts this offense. People will look at stats and be like, oh, he always gets in the 30s for catches. He can catch it if you throw it right at him, but he's not a guy that you can really do much advanced things with, and a lot of drops late in the year as well. So yeah, I'm just looking for something different out of running back for the Bills, and it's more so appreciate everything he's done. I just would want to go in a different direction overall.
And special shout out producer AJ running as always. But further than that, we have a 9:00 show tonight. It's actually going to be a really good edition. So please tune into the 9:00 show. Decides coverage. That's Ant tonight. So we're going to continue the action coming at you. And tomorrow with our cap special. What a great thing we're looking forward to tomorrow evening. A special, all of us, from me, Greg, Ant, David. We're going to, and all the producers, we're going to have a cap special, a running tally, kind of pick up on our conversation here of what Mike and I are talking about. We're going to propose it to the team of all of Cover One. We're going to agree on an official move list on what will happen, from our ideas on who to cut to how to create cap space. Who are we restructuring? These resigns. Are we going to do Poyer? Are we going to do Edmonds? Are we going to do Singletary? We're going to do some of the lesser guys. So please tune into that on the Cover One Podcast Network tomorrow evening for that edition. So look out for that episode. So Mike, I think we both agree there's really no path to Singletary. We've mentioned off some of the rookies that we'll get into later on. Some of the people, I believe AJ and some others, are going down to Indy to kind of look at some of the combine that's going down there. So it's going to be a fun next couple of weeks to really get into those running backs. I think if Singletary doesn't sign, I do believe that will be on their list for at least the third to fifth round.
It is crazy.
So we're going to get into that.
We've been talking about running back in the draft 3 consecutive years.
But 2 of the 3 are going to be gone.
It's getting to the point where eventually you're just hoping one of these guys can just take a step up. I know we talk about running back being a devalued position, and we're mentioning all that stuff right now, but eventually one of these guys has to be more than what we're seeing. They've all been okay outside of Zach Moss, but I'm hoping eventually they can, maybe Cook is the guy, they can get a little bit more from these spots. You see a lot of other teams across the league hitting on later round running backs, especially when you see the Chiefs get a 7th rounder who ends up being an impact player for them. So hopefully eventually the Bills can get some more consistency from that position overall.
Yeah, and as we kind of rip through some of the other moves that Brandon Beane is going to need to make, but the team's thinking, I know we spent a lot of time on Edmonds, so please on demand check out our last week's episode. Some good continuing talk on this topic to kind of start us off. And what are your Bills' early free agency plans? That's the topic for today. Talked about Edmonds last week. Just got into Singletary and Poyer, so please check that out if you didn't already hear that. But as we move on to the list, there's still some names there of players that are interesting. I wanted to start with one that's not necessarily a free agent, but may play a role in this whole scenario, and it's Ed Oliver. He's got a $10.5 million cap, 1 year. Can move that salary. You can extend it. You can do a lot of different things here with Ed Oliver. He kind of plays a role into this situation here this year, in my opinion. Mike, what are you thinking with Ed Oliver? Do you want to see him extended, reduce that 10 cap hit, push him out, have a DT for a long time, be pretty decent, not really have to worry about it too much? Are you trade him for a pick? Are you let him play this year? Where do you stand on Ed Oliver, as it is a key name as we need to kind of plan out this future?
Yeah, this is a tough one, Kev. I don't really know the right way to move forward with Ed, and it might end up being a situation similar to what we have in Tremaine Edmonds right now, where you invested a first-round pick in this guy. He was supposed to be a game wrecker, a game-changing type of D-tackle. And through 4 years, that hasn't been the case. But he hasn't been a bad player either. He is a decent NFL player, but he hasn't brought to the table what the expectation was. So if you want to trade him, what type of value are you going to get back? It's questionable that you're going to get fair value back for him. then also, if you trade him, you risk him going to another team and potentially having a breakout fifth year. And then you're sitting at home being like, that's exactly what we need, and we got rid of it. And you risk giving up on a player too soon. So that's part of the thought process. But then you look at how much money a guy like Ed Oliver is going to command, and that's where it really becomes an issue. Because if you don't end up signing him to an extension prior to the season, if you wait until next free agency, you're going to be kind of in a Tremaine Edmonds situation again, where if he plays well, you're going to have to pay him big money. D tackles get paid big money. Good ones get paid like they're great. Great ones get paid like they're the best players in football. So it's a tough situation. I'm not comfortable yet giving him a long-term deal and paying him premium money. I know all offseason, early part of the year, I thought I was going to get to that point. But right now, having seen how our D-line did down the stretch without Von Miller, no one on that line carried them. So obviously I feel good about Greg Rousseau, but not enough about the rest of the D-line overall. So I think you play it safe and you go into the season without a contract, and you basically hope that throughout the year he earns the contract. And if he earns a big deal, you can reward him in the next offseason, and you just take it from there. I know that's not what a lot of people wouldn't say would be the smart move. They'd say trade him and get value for it if you don't know if you're going to bring him back. But I don't know how you can have a decision either way at this point.
It's an interesting one. I don't hear much with the not extend him talk or not trade him talk. So that's an interesting perspective to kind of.
I mean, I guess the thing is, everybody's going to want to make that decision now because they don't want to be in limbo
right
at next year. And the fear is, like we said with Tremaine, the guy performs at a high level, and then next thing you know, you're paying a premium for a player that you could have extended for much less had you just done it earlier. But if you don't have the confidence that you're 100% going to get that type of play from him, I don't know how you can pay him that contract now. And yeah, if he performs and deserves the big deal after next year, is there going to be consequences? Yes, but that's the way it is sometimes. And I would rather play it safe than take a risk and put myself in further potential trouble. It's different when you have a guy like Josh Allen, where he's a franchise quarterback and that you're going to get that solid production going forward. Yeah, give him the bank and try to be early with it to avoid paying the premium later on. It's different with an Ed Oliver. You really don't know what you have yet.
Right. And let me put a different perspective on it because I appreciate that side of it. The thing is, there's too much benefit to doing something now in a lot of different facets, right? So obviously the trade is pretty simple. It's you trade him, you get a pick for him or picks. Whether what we think he's worth, I think he's worth more than the next guy. And if you're saying to keep him, I think the Bills kind of agree that he's not worth selling for a 4th round pick. I don't believe the Bills think that. I don't think that they cash him out on a 4th round pick today. I do believe they would go your avenue of holding on to him and seeing what happens. However, if you get into day 2 and you're talking about a 3rd and a 5th or a 2nd and a 6th or some variation of that, I do think that compensation is good enough to also free up $10.5 million. So it isn't just trade Ed, get a pick. It's trade Ed, free money, and a pick. So the Bills could then, in theory, make some of these moves, offensive line Powers, Ciamalo, some of the other moves we will continue to talk about next week, maybe some more. We're going to talk about exact free agent targets once the franchise tag things are worked out, see who's tagged, if anybody, and that'll come to more light as you reach kind of more the end of the opening of the franchise tag. So that'll come more early March. So next week we'll get into some more targets. This week we'll just focus on the Bills players. But that's $10.5 million you free up. You get the picks. There's more benefit there than just you just get a 4th round pick. I believe in any situation to where you're getting a day 3 or later pick, that's out. I'm with you. They keep them. They ride it out. That's the scenario. But I do think that there could be an option there, or maybe some interesting topics are, could you do a player for player trade? We've heard some of those be proposed. Or do you extend him? Do you say right now he's only worth a single digit amount, 8 million, 9 million, that Poyer amount? Do you extend him out, cut off the 10.5? You pay him now because you trust him to develop, maybe, with the injuries and he's finally going to take that final step. Do you get him at such a reduced rate? Maybe like you saw with a Tage Thompson and the Sabres, they finally took that step. Or do you do something to sign him now for 3 years?
I'd be totally okay with that. If my main issue is knowing how professional athletes think.
Yeah.
He's going to, I would imagine Ed Oliver would rather bet on himself that he's going to have a premium 5th year and hit a big level contract than take what would be a fair level deal at the current moment. Typically with athletes, it makes more sense to bet on yourself than it does take the money at the current moment. It's different for everyone, but in the NFL and the NBA, normally you see them trying to go after their max potential earnings rather than take the safe, smaller contract overall, like what happened with Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins with the Sabres. Both of them, they're getting stability, they're getting fair deals, but they left money on the table. Typically in the NFL, NBA, they're not leaving that money on the table. They're going after what their max worth is.
Yeah, I mean, MLB is interesting because people buy out their arbitration. There's some weird things that go on with the MLB. Someone like Fernando Tatis or some of the, Ozzy Albies or some of the stars will buy out their arbitration years because they'll get paid more and they don't have to wait for it. With the NFL, you're right. He's just on a 1 for 10. Could go down though. However, he could kind of meet in the middle and kind of hedge that bet and get a couple more decent years, which players do. So it'll be interesting to see if that's on the fold. So we'll see what happens with Alfred. I personally like the trade him. I think that getting a couple of draft picks and or a player for him now, freeing up that 10.5 million, we can also spend that money elsewhere on this roster. So you're really getting a player and then picks as well, or a premium player. So I think that there's a lot of flexibility there by cashing him out now. And then compared to, let's say he does play well and he bets on himself, I wouldn't
be against it, Kev. I mean, it does make sense. The freeing up of money is almost more valuable than the picks when it's all said and done. If you can get a pair or you can get a day 1, day 2 pick, that does at least create a thought where you have to entertain it. But my thought process is that Brandon Beane probably is not considering that at the moment.
Yeah, maybe not. And we'll see how that plays a role as we get closer to draft and maybe as he scouts more of the DTs. But the dig stuff, that's just bogus. That's just a bizarre storyline right now with, Mike Florio and Pro Football Talk and others who are trying to drum up some interest based on Diggs' past tweets. He's done this before, blah, 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 whatever. Been 3 years to the day, but,
clickbait.
No, like he'd have to sit out before getting traded because he counts for the Bills on $20 million on the cap right now. If you trade him, he counts for $37 million. So even to trade him, like you would need a first, a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and a player. Like it's just, you'd have to make up for a ton of money. I can't even see a scenario to where that would happen. In the worst case of scenario. So even looking at it like, okay, let's say that's legitimate. You can break it down by saying, he's not going to get $37 million against the Bills cap this year. It's just not going to happen. Different things happen if you traded him after June 1st. But I'm not going to even get into that, some of that mumbo jumbo, because that's what it is mumbo jumbo, Mike. There's no storyline there. Just a player being very vocal and betting on himself. So that's quite frankly what I say about that. What's your take on what's going on with the Diggs tweets and these stupid articles right now?
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's clickbait. It's the entertainment side of the NFL industry taking precedence over the actual reporting side. It's obviously easy to connect the dots. What happened in Minnesota? He gets mad at Josh Allen during a playoff game. It gets seen on national television. Then he has some comments. People are trying to make much about nothing. Like you said, there really isn't an avenue for him to to be traded. And the Bills have no reason to want to trade him at this point either. He signed a contract extension last offseason. He's going to be a Buffalo Bill going forward. And really the only way any of this changes is if there's some type of horrific collapse by the Bills this season where they suddenly forget how to play football and Josh Allen suddenly doesn't target Diggs anymore. Once he gets his 100 catches again, he'll remember this is the place that's made me into one of the biggest receivers in football. Diggs was always a good receiver, but it wasn't until he connected with Josh Allen that he became one of the top 5 guys in the entire sport of football. So I think it's just a lot of talk for nothing during the offseason, and once we move on, it'll be proven that way.
Fair enough. As if there's ever anything legitimate about this, obviously all of us at Cover One would dive in and actually talk about the cap ramifications or whatever, but it's just mumbo jumbo. Like there's a path to like it making financial sense if they waited on it, like post draft and saw who they drafted, but it's not going to happen. And these players are powerful enough though. Look at what Carr was able to do. Look at what, Brady's been basically able to pound he's Brady, but he's able to pound the Bucs on their cap. So it's like, he's of the level to where weird things could happen, but it's mumbo jumbo, and it's not even worth breaking down as if ever something was legitimate. We'll be the first ones on here. The cap team will be the first ones on here breaking down what that could mean, and that would come with like just an excruciating amount of picks for a different team. So as we continue down the path of the Bills free agency, so right now we've kind of agreed no Poyer, no Singletary, not trading Diggs, and we're holding at Oliver right now, according to Mike. So we're going to keep him on the cap for this purpose. So as we look down, some of the other names, a much talked about offensive line position. I want to get into that now. One option is, and he said he would play basically for nothing, is Roger Saffold. Now, we don't want to see him starting day one. Is he better than Greg Van Roten? Is he a decent, serviceable backup starter in case of an injury? That's what our talking point is right now. Do you re-sign him to a 1 for $2 million, just straight up 1 year, $2 million, Mike? Yes or no?
I mean, I would if he was content with being a backup.
Yep,
but
gotta be.
I'm assuming that wouldn't be the case. And if I'm Roger Saffold, I'm still trying to explore the market to see if there is any starting opportunities out there for me. I'm not saying there is, but I would still want to give it a shot. You can always resort to signing him as a backup anywhere, unless he was so satisfied with his 1 year in Buffalo that he wants to just be part of this organization, regardless of if he's starting or not. I don't think that's likely, Kev. I guess it's certainly possible. I don't buy the likelihood of it. So while I would take him back 1 year, $2 million deal, I'm going to say he's going to. You think
he's still getting 1 for $5? Huh? Okay.
I'm not saying he's going to get 1 for $5. I just don't think you test the waters. Doesn't mean it's going to work out for you. But would you accept something that is beneath what your goal or expectation is? I would say no. You'd want to see if there's a better spot out there for you. So if I'm him, even if the Bills give me a low offer, I'm still going to try to see if I can get something. I would tell teams, hey, I made the Pro Bowl last year. I know I had an off year, but I made the Pro Bowl, and I still have been a serviceable starter throughout my career, and try to see if there's a team out there that's desperate enough to bring you on.
He's got a bad taste in people's mouths. I mean, it's an interesting thing. For me, like, once again, preface it a second time, it is not to start. This would be a premium backup, a guy that would come in for potentially the rookie guard. We'll get into rookie guards once again as our future draft shows coming up.
But your preface is a hypothetical, Kev. You're assuming that he's okay with that situation. I'm saying that likely,
for as bad as everyone thinks he is, you think he's going to get $5 million?
I'm not saying $5 million. I'm saying if I'm him, I'm going to try to play. I'm going to try to go somewhere where I can start. So I'm not saying that there's a starter position for him out there, but it's worth the shot, at least to see if there's a job or a team or a situation.
Remember how connected he is to Aaron Kromer, and remember that he probably, without the rookie guard,
I get that part. But what I'm saying, Kevin, is like, if to be a backup, if he wants, if he's okay with a 1 year, $2 million deal, that deal will still be present a month or two after the start of free agency. He doesn't need to sign it today or tomorrow. He can wait until later in the spring, and then at that point sign a deal to be a backup guard in Buffalo if that's what presents itself. It doesn't do him any benefit to sign something like that right now. He'd be better off just waiting it out.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I think that there's a number that's low enough to where you'd bring him back as a premium backup, and he would play that backup role.
I'm not saying that the Bills wouldn't do it. I'm saying he won't do it.
Okay.
You understand? Like, it's not like if Roger Saffold goes to the Bills and says, yeah, I'll sign a 1 year, $2 million, 1 year, $3 million deal, I'm fine with the Bills bringing him back. I'm saying it benefits Saffold to be patient and not just rush to sign.
But not if the Bills go and get that guard with somewhere else. And these places, these are now he's for sure a backup of a backup. Now signing maybe even less than 1 for 2.5.
Well, then at that point, you weren't meant to continue playing. You retire and you call it you go off to the sunset.
All right. So there's a lot of negativity around Roger Saffold. We'll move on right now. Mike with the pass because he doesn't think that Roger would take it. So in theory, that's a pass on him actually having that deal here in Buffalo. Kind of Ike Botteger. He's the guy that I think many people would like to see come back. Unlike Saffold, Ike Botteger seems to have a pretty good feel around the Buffalo region, and fans seem to, enjoy that he's on the roster. I think you get him for 1.1, 1.4 roughly as a backup interior guard. Mike, you like that?
I'm fine with that.
All right. Mike take somebody.
I don't really have much to comment on it. If he wants to come back and he's willing to take a cheap contract, why not?
I figured as much. As you kind of look at Tommy Doyle, I think he takes over a couple of mentions for the Bobby Hart role. I think that Tommy Doyle was the original Bobby Hart actually last year. I think that he takes back his role as a premium other backup, and he would take in that Hart role. They'll probably bring Hart back again at the same rate. No one's going to stop that from happening. He's taken it before. There's proof there, as well as the Bills will have proven they take him at the backup rate. Bobby Hart should be on the roster next year, at least through training camp, with Ike Botteger at somewhere near that minimum 1 and 1.2 there for that. As we continue down the offensive line, a couple quick names, though. David Quesenberry and Greg Van Roten. Do either of them return at a fairly reasonable rate in the $1.5 million range? Mike, do you think either of them come back?
Yeah, I think that those are certainly possible. I mean, neither of them are great in any respect, but they're serviceable. They provide depth. I'm okay with either of them coming back.
Once again, this is veteran depth. This is before the draft. The Bills will not leave guard untouched in the draft, in my opinion. Interior offensive line will not be left alone. So that's not going to be there just because we're talking about Ike Botteger. These are just the Bills' current free agents. That doesn't mean that the Ike Botteger and Bobby Hart and David Quesenberry are going to be your day one starters. So let's make sure that that's crystal clear. These are just your backup options. The league barely has 5 starters on each team, let alone backups. So you got to remember that some of these guys that are going to return at a reasonable rate. And look at the offensive lines in like the XFL. They're terrible. I mean, there's not enough offensive linemen right now. So that kind of proved to this. Like, you're not going to have, Zach Martins behind Mitch Morse's. That's not quite how you build an offensive line. So you need veteran minimum guys, especially with the way the Bills cap is this year. These are the guys that need to back up your starters. I personally think they draft a guard because of the benefit to how much you'll owe him. In the second round, you only owe him, $1.5 million. You're going to get high-end guard. If you sign a Powers or a Siamalu, you're talking about 8 to 14 per year, roughly, somewhere in there based on the market. It's just not overly doable. And at least then you'll also have a rookie guard in the second round, 4 years, $1.5 million, $2 million, 2.5 as this contract goes, but a very reasonable deal. Call it like 4 for $7. It's just too reasonable to pass up on something like that on a roster that needs it. I think they get a day one starting guard on day 2. So that's my opinion on where they go. And I think there's some really good names of guys that I really like right now. And we're definitely going to get into those in maybe a couple of weeks here. So make sure you tune in as March approaches. We'll definitely get into some of the guard names. But I 100% personally believe that they'll draft an offensive lineman. Some of these names are just who's currently a free agent on the Bills roster. And I'm sorry, they're going to re-sign some of them. I don't know what to say. They're going to be re-signed. Mike and I are kind of just trying to guess what we would do in these scenarios. But some of these guys are going to return. A really interesting one, Mike. I had this noted to talk about and want to make sure we get it in. Case Keenum. He is best friends with Josh Allen, apparently. This room of Barkley and Josh seem to be like the best quarterback room rapport-wise that they've ever built. Do you re-sign Case? Is he a guy? There is a lot of names in here of guys that could be a QB2. You've got like the Jacoby Brissett's. If he'll take a backup role, you have the Sam Darnold. You have Mitch Trubisky most likely being available. You have a couple of very interesting names that you could maybe upgrade, but does it upgrade the room? If you have to play one of these guys, how likely are we to win anyways? What's your opinion on, do you bring back Case Keenum 1 for 3, 1 for 4? Do you try to find someone younger and more talented? What's your play here right now as we're looking at the sheet and seeing, all right, backup quarterback's on it again?
Yeah, I'm fine with bringing back Case Keenum if he's willing to come back on the cheap.
Yeah.
If he wants to get a little bit more than what a backup quarterback should get paid, I'm also okay with him walking. Like you said, there are some decent backup quarterbacks that will be available. If a guy like Mitch Trubisky is willing to come back, if a Jacoby Brissett, or even, you never know, Sam Darnold, if a situation where one of those three guys comes to your team and they're willing to play for about the same money that Case Keenum is willing to play for, then I would prefer one of those three instead. But it's at backup quarterback, we've seen where the Bills do value it. They don't want to go into a season with Matt Barkley as the number 2 anymore, just because that drop off is crazy. Obviously, any drop off from Allen to a Keenum or Trubisky is significant, but you at least trust that they might be able to steal you a game, or maybe get you by for a 2-3 week span. I don't know if you could say the same for a guy like Matt Barkley, but I don't value backup quarterback enough to be giving significant money to any of these guys either. So if Keenum decides he wants to go a different direction, I just put a couple offers to a group of guys. I'm saying first one that takes this number, you can be the backup. And and that's my approach on it. You need.
Do you let Josh have a say in it, though? I guess would be the point there. Do you let Josh care or no?
I personally, I wouldn't care. I know in the past they kind of have had guys in the QB room that he's been close with. Best part of the reason why Barkley's there right now. Obviously, Davis Webb, and he got along fine with Trubisky. He's getting along fine, with Case Keenum. But Josh is at the point where he's a franchise quarterback. I don't think you need to be surrounding him with his best friends. You just need to be surrounding him with the best players possible to win football games and make a run. I don't think winning in January and February is going to make a difference if you're surrounded by your best friend in the quarterback room, or if you're surrounded by someone that you just work well along with. So I understand why you would consider giving him a say, but we've also discovered in the past with other Buffalo sports teams, when you give certain players too much of a say, it doesn't always work out in your benefit.
Yeah, not to include Aaron Rodgers, who's not a free agent, but there's 6 starting quarterbacks out there that they've designated could be starting quarterbacks that are in free agent. This is a lot. The Bills never had this in the drought year, but you have Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Jacoby Brissett, they say still a starter, Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr. Those are the 6 starting quarterbacks. Underneath that tier, you have Sam Darnold leading this tier 2, Baker Mayfield, Mike White, Teddy Bridgewater. Finish off tier 2, tier 3s, Andy Dalton, Gardner Minshew, Taylor Heineke, Jarrett Stidham, Flacco, and Keenum are in the 3rd tier. So those are all the guys that are on Keenum's tier or better. He's kind of at the bottom of tier 3. I think he's a fairly good tier 3 style quarterback. What do you think there, Mike? Anything that jumps out to you? Are you just going you going Keenum? You feeling good about that, or do you think that they should really try for a Minshew, Darnold, Mike White?
I just don't have strong enough opinions on it, Kev. It's one of those things where, like I said, with a backup quarterback, you're just trying to steal a game or two. I don't think there's any other quarterback in the NFL that plays a style similar to what Josh Allen brings to the table. So even though you look at a guy like Mitch Trubisky and you'd say, well, he's kind of mobile, he has a decent arm. In the end, he's nowhere close to Josh as a quarterback. Keenum, you need to play a completely different style when he's at quarterback. Jacoby Brissett, you're going to have to play differently as well. So in the end, you're just trying to find someone that if Josh went down for a month, like we thought almost happened at the end of last year, you're hoping that the guy can just salvage a game or two and keep it from just falling apart completely. I'm not looking for some superstar that's going to keep things at the same high level, because we know how much the Bills offense revolves on Josh just being superhuman at times.
Yeah. I'm picking to clear this up. I'm picking Sam Darnold. I think he has the potential to win you games. He's close with Josh.
He's the best option. He's the best option. We both.
I think he's worth. If you're giving out 1 for 3s, if you're giving up someone to rebirth their career, similar to Mitchell Trubisky, I think you call up Sam and you sell the opportunity to him like you did Mitch the first time. That's the way I would go, and I'd actually feel okay about him coming in as like really a guy that's able to win some football games. So that's where I stand on that. I think you at least try and you say, hey, come here, come be the best version of yourself. Look what Mitch went out and then got a starter role. Come back here, come be with Josh. You're going to be on a good football team. That's where I stand on the whole backup quarterback. I'm starting with Sam Darnold to see if he'll come and back up Josh Allen. Pretty simple. Couple defensive ends or defensive linemen I want to get into here before show closes. Jordan Phillips, fan favorite. Shaq Lawson, another guy who came back and played very well. You re-signing both of those, Mike? Are those two guys that the Bills are bringing back?
I'm open to it. Shaq can play. He's not going to be the type of defensive end fans want, though. He's not going to be a pressure guy at the end. He's decent in the run game, but he's really kind of I don't want to be hard on him, kind of on his last life right now in Buffalo. He's never going to really be an impact starter in the NFL again. He's more of a backup depth guy. Jordan Phillips fans, I think, still have memories of him having the, 9-sack season back in 2019. And this year just injured throughout, can make impact plays, but they're guys I would definitely welcome back if they're willing to stay here and play on the cheap. That's basically their value now. They bring in, they can make a play here or there, but their real purpose is just to fill out depth on this roster.
Yeah, I agree. I'd sign Shaq. I think he comes at a fairly reasonable rate. I think that's exactly who you're looking for as a backup rotational defensive end. I think he was fine. I just don't know how much assets you can keep continuing to pour into defensive end, whether there's a fallacy there or not. I think that it's fine, including Von Miller's potential return early in the season. I truly believe that. I believe his timeline is going to be way earlier than Trey White's was. And the ability to, I like AJ Epinesa more than the average person. I like Greg Rousseau. He's just a rotational guy in there, and maybe you could go find another one to battle in there, but I'm re-signing Shaq. I think he knows the system. He likes playing here. Will take a deal in the $2 million range. I think it's a decent combination. I don't have any issues with that. And Phillips, I could take or leave Phillips. He played hurt most of the year. Definitely didn't deserve the $6 million, $5 million that he got this year. That's a guy I could more take or leave right now, especially if you keep Ed Oliver in your scenario, you keep Daquan Jones. You have Tim Settle on the roster still. You might do a little bit of youth movement in there somewhere.
Kev, this team is going to look so similar in many regards next year. It's going to be so frustrating to a large part of this fan base that essentially the main thing that's
fine.
And I'm okay with it, but based on the comments that we've gotten since the playoff loss, a lot of people want, when bad things happen, they want change. Changes how they process how are things going to get better? And really everything we're talking about, the changes we're discussing today aren't really great additions. It's you're probably going to lose Jordan Poyer. You're possibly losing Tremaine Edmonds. Your guys coming back might be depth guys that are getting minimal veteran contracts. Outside of the draft and maybe one decent free agent signing, they're running it back with this squad. And a lot of people are going to be frustrated overall with that, Kev.
I think if Tremaine walks, they do address linebacker. I think like a Jermaine Pratt. I think they'll go to the next best option. Truthfully, I do think that. And there's been a lot of talk about if Pratt at a half or a good reduction to Tremaine Edmonds is a better value. Going to get into that next week for sure, as we talk about some of the targets for the Bills specific to their free agency class. So we'll start to talk replacements here. Mike seems to think the roster stays the same. I think mostly true. I keep Shaq. I let Jordan Phillips walk. That's my personal. I think, Mike, you said you could take or leave either. AJ says cut them both or let them both walk. So there's probably, I like the 1-and-1 plan there in the defensive line. We'll see how that ends up turning out. Lastly here, the receivers. Everyone wants to talk about him. I wanted to get him in here last. You got, obviously, Jake Kumaro is a free agent. I'm done with it. I'm done with the experiment. See you later. I don't think there's much to talk about. But more talking point there is Jamison Crowder. Do you bring him back on a $1 million deal, Mike? I think you're a Jamison Crowder fan. What do you bring him back?
I'd take him back. I would take him or Cole Beasley back. Either one of them wants to sign a cheap contract. I would bring them back. That
pick one. You get to pick one for $2 million.
I'm picking Jamison Crowder, but I will say this: even if I re-sign Jamison Crowder or I re-sign Cole Beasley, that's no guarantee I'm going to be running with them during the regular season or that they're even going to make my team. No, of course not. The way I look at wide receiver going forward, I have Diggs 1, Davis as a 2. Ideally, one of these 4 standout first-round wide receivers. You guys all know Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. And there's some other guys there that have some high skill level. Ideally, I'll have one of them as the 3, and then Khalil Shakir as the 4. And if that happens, if Jamison Crowder or Cole Beasley want to come back and sign a veteran minimum deal, 1 year, $2 million or something along those lines, I'll gladly take them back to be a 4 or 5 receiver on this team. But it's really not a tough decision for me. I definitely would be open to either of them coming back.
Okay. For me, I bring back. I don't bring back Crowder. He's gone. I bring back.
You didn't like Crowder going back.
And I was right.
Camp last year.
And I was right.
He played 2 games before he got hurt. So
okay. That's exactly right. He's always been hurt, though. That was part of the reason I didn't like him. Plus his bobbled interception off the hands. And we tried to blame him.
He wasn't sharp. I admit it. Like, Kev, he wasn't sharp in his limited action, but he was also hurt during camp.
Okay.
And put behind the
got hurt again.
I do believe the Bills' offense would have looked different had Crowder been available throughout last season. If we're looking at the offense, Cole Beasley's loss, losing him, letting him go, changed everything. Crowder was going to be a person that had significant production out of the slot, and suddenly he's down, and it forced Isaiah McKenzie to do a lot more than what he should have been counted on doing. And I also think that, for better or worse, the team, coaching staff, and fans got a little bit too hyped about a productive training camp out of McKenzie. Crowder got hurt early. McKenzie made some plays, and we entered the regular season thinking McKenzie was suddenly going to be a guy after not being a guy the first 4 years of his NFL career.
Do you bring back McKenzie? How about that? You didn't.
I let McKenzie walk. I'm done. I'm done with McKenzie. And I like him.
2.7. Yeah, you say
I like him. It's just he had a role on the team in the past when he was the gadget guy and he was doing the jet sweeps, and you could do certain things with him, and he had special teams impact. Yeah, he had a role. He's not doing special teams anymore. He's not doing gadget stuff anymore. You have him as your slot receiver. He doesn't add that dimension to me where I want him on the field as a number 3 or number 4 receiver. I don't have the confidence in him. He's had a few games here or there, but too many big drops in critical situations and too inconsistent throughout the entire year. I want to redo the whole slot position, and maybe if Khalil Shakir is that guy, they can attack the draft a little bit differently. Maybe Khalil Shakir is the person that they want as the number 3 next year. But yeah, I'm good with McKenzie and Kumaro both walking.
Okay, so you can cut McKenzie, save a little bit of money. Kumaro's a free agent; he's walking. John Brown's walking. We're going to.
Yeah, John Brown, I forgot was even on the team. So
okay, that's fine. We'll agree. I guess they're going to bring back. Both of us agree they're going to bring back Beasley to some sort of deal, some low end deal, and then Crowder. I don't think so. Mike said he would. We'll see which way they go with that. And then real briefly to break down some of the names you just mentioned: Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Josh Downs, Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt, Keyshawn Boutte. Those are your top 8, top 50 by most boards, depending on where they are. And Zay Flowers, his odds shot up. Woo! His odds went to one of the best receivers drafted first, plus 750 odds that he's the first receiver drafted. So there's some buzz around Zay Flowers right now. So there's definitely some names in there of people that could be really, and that's not
I
even
think they can get one of those guys. So when you look at like the top 5 receivers, Kev, they should be able. I wouldn't guarantee it, but I think one of those guys will drop to 27.
Okay, and that's not even including Nathaniel Tank Dell, who some people think is a first, second round pick.
My biggest question is if it's one of those wide receivers versus Cyrus Torrence, which route do they go? I think the Bills would take the guard, but I would be okay going either way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think the Bills would take the premium receiver, knowing what their costs are in free agency, knowing you're going to lose Gabe Davis either way this time next year. So I think the premium receiver. I like a couple of other guards in this draft. That's why I don't know how much I like some of those second, third, fourth receivers. I like a lot of interior linemen in this draft. So I think that plays a role, in my opinion, as you look through some like Andrew Voorhees of the world, Jarrett Patterson, Luke Wepler, some of the other John Michael Schmitz, Avila. So there's a couple of other Ricky Stromberg. There's a couple of other interior names that I really like on this roster. And that's even if Torrence, the one, is available as well. So we're going to get into that in future editions. We have a great episode coming up at 9:00. Make sure you tune in with that with Ant. We have the cap special tomorrow, which this and then even more. We're going to make some official predictions. We'll take in everything we talked about today, Mike and myself. I'll bring into the cap special tomorrow. We'll give our plan. We'll give our course of action, and we'll see which ones of these that we've talked about will be implemented by the entire Cover One crew. We'll release cool graphics and exact cap figures after that edition. So make sure you tune into that live tomorrow. Cover One Buffalo will be doing a special tomorrow. So everyone, make sure you tune into that. Mike, to kind of wrap this up, tell me how I know you said you think everything's going to stay the same. Maybe one move, especially if they don't let Tremaine or sign Tremaine. Ultimately, do you think that minus a draft class, do you think that Brandon Beane's going to sit there and watch free agency fly by him? He never has. Do you think that he does it? This is the year.
I'm not going to say he's going to let it fly by him. Okay. I certainly think he's going to bring somebody in that it won't be a high-level free agent, but someone in the mid-tier. I believe he'll try to bring someone mid-tier related to Buffalo, whether that be a guy like maybe he makes a move after a Paris Campbell. Maybe he makes a move after some mid-level guy. I know one of the Twitter people I follow mentioned maybe Mecole Hardman from Kansas City could be a possibility to Buffalo. So there's some move out there. It's just trying to guess it. Probably not going to be the easiest thing to project. So until we really get more reports, more rumors, out there. It's really no use speculating at this point. But I am interested to see how the Bills attack this offseason. I do think there's ways of improving this team through the draft and addressing some things in free agency. Obviously, they're limited by the money. There's not going to be any Von Miller type move this offseason or major move like that. But I do think Brandon Beane is going to be smart, and he's going to put ideas together and try to work something out. I know people have speculated Odell Beckham Jr. because of the recent hiring of the Bills wide receiver coach. That's probably going to be too costly, but you never know. Is there some spark out there that is already in the works that we just don't know about? We'll just have to wait and see.
To my point, it was a loaded question in that time. I do not think Brandon Beane sits and waits with his potential to take the next step, especially if Tremaine Edmonds doesn't get done. That would cap the team a little bit. If he doesn't get done, Bills aren't just going to sit there. I think they're going to make a few moves. Jermaine Pratt's of the world, maybe use that money to address receiver. Do they see if any of the veteran receivers are available? Do any of them fit the bill for the team? I think that you could see a different multitude of moves in free agency if they don't sign any this whole edition. If none of these guys sign, I do think that the Bills could utilize that. Say they cut McKenzie, they could do a couple of other things, do something with Hines, either reduce his salary or cut him. They're going to free up enough money, in my opinion, to then go ahead and make a move, especially without Tremaine Edmonds. So that's something to keep an eye on. I do not believe Beane just sits and watches this free agency period, letting a couple of these guys walk. I don't think it's going to be on his agenda. But, Mike, we've been a great free agency edition. We have more stuff coming up. Please tune in tomorrow to our final cap special. Draft coverage. AJ's going down to the combine. Lots of cool stuff going on, and cover one and player profiles. So we have so much stuff coming up and coming at you over the next 2 months. So we're really looking forward to all of the draft coverage, all the free agency coverage. We'll be doing live shows. We'll be doing things as news and notes come out. If anything's actually realistic with Diggs and some of that stuff, we'll be the first ones at you with what that means, ramifications, what the team will be doing going forward. Stay tuned. 9:00. We have Ant coming on to talk for his show. So cap special tomorrow. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. AJ, Mike, myself, we'll be right back at you next Tuesday, 7:00 for another brand new edition of the Going Deep podcast. Catch you guys next week.
Josh Allen looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown. Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown. Play action.